Okay, I think we have given people enough time to join the call, and I think it's time to start. Welcome to this webinar, which is an important moment for Bonsucro. For the last few months, we've been working on developing a new strategy for our organization and for the sugarcane industry. This is the launch of this strategy, and there are a series of similar webinars in different time zones. So this is obviously the one for Africa, Middle East. And the name of our new strategy is Changing for Good. Just now, Danielle will take you through the new strategy. But before that, I would like to share a few housekeeping rules and information for you. This call will be in English, and Danielle's French is not that great that she can do this in French, so we will have translations available during this webinar. Maybe Nicolas, you can say this in French.
Bonjour à tous, merci beaucoup de nous rejoindre pour ce webinaire de lancement de notre nouvelle stratégie. Le bouton de traduction, vous pouvez le voir sur ou en bas de votre écran, à droite, ou en haut, en fonction de votre configuration. Si vous appuyez sur le bouton interprétation, vous verrez le canal French pour avoir une traduction instantanée en français. Je vous souhaite un bon webinaire.
Nicolas, merci beaucoup, merci beaucoup.
Rien.
Then also this session will be recorded, and there will be both a recording of the English version as well as a recording of the French version. And those recordings will be shared with you after the webinar, as well as the slides that will be presented. Then if you have questions during the presentation, please use the Q&A function. There is a link to that at the bottom probably of your screen, which you can click and you can ask your questions there. We will have Danielle first finish the entire presentation, and then we will have time for questions at the end of the presentation. I hope that can work for you. Yeah, and I hope you enjoy it. I hope that you can give us constructive feedback afterwards. And Danielle, I think if you are ready, you can start.
Thank you. Hello, hi everybody. Thanks so much for dialing in today to hear about our new Bonsucro strategy for the period 2021 to 2026, which we've called Changing for Good. It sets out our agenda for change to deliver more value to our members and stakeholders and to make a bigger impact with sustainable sugarcane. And our new strategic plan is built on our many achievements to date, and we've also reflected on our lessons learned. The strategy development process itself was not a top-down process. We developed it very collaboratively and iteratively, working together and taking inputs from many of our members, from broader stakeholders, discussing with our staff, with our technical advisory board, and our board of directors were highly engaged. And we were supported by a small team of consultants from an organisation called Change Agency. We worked over many months and virtual meetings to get it right. And we now think that we've got a strategic plan that we can be proud of. I'll take the next 40 minutes to take you through key highlights, and I'll leave time at the end for questions. And I would also recommend that you'll be sent an email after the webinar, and I recommend that you also have an opportunity in your own time to go through the strategic plan, which is available in a long form and a short form, and we have it in English and French as well, I think. So starting at the beginning with a summary of our baseline analysis, just to say that over the last strategy period, we've made real progress. We grew our membership, we've strengthened our systems, and we've achieved many of our goals. And almost 5% of all sugarcane agriculture around the world is now certified to the Bonsucro standard. So we're definitely in an era now of having global reach. We have certified mills in 19 countries, including in the largest sugarcane origins of the Americas and Asia Pacific. And we do have a certified mill in the Africa region as well as 12 mills in membership coming from 8 countries in Africa. We have a growing pool of committed buyers, and they represent collectively at least 20% of the global demand for sugar, as well as an increasing number of buyers coming and joining Bonsucro from newer sectors such as biopackaging. So this global reach provides us with a really strong foundation to go further and address other issues beyond certification, the more complex systemic problems that require collaboration and collective action. And I'll go into that a little bit later. During our baseline, we reviewed our environmental impacts, and we can see that through the process of certification, certified mills significantly reduce their greenhouse gas emissions over time. And there's some metrics there on the slide. We also see a significant reduction in other key environmental metrics such as water use and improvements in soil health. And scientific models indicate that the global adoption of Bonsucro standard would halve GHG emissions from the sugarcane sector and reduce water use by 65%, as well as nutrient loading by 34%. So the framework that we have in the Bonsucro standard is highly relevant for tackling some of the world's most pressing environmental impacts. On the social side, we have our code of conduct, which has committed all of our members, not just the certified members, but all of our members to respect human rights, and we've improved our due diligence process around that. We can see that the certified producers are on average globally paying about 21% above legal minimum wages. And again, there's increase over time in wages paid, particularly to the lowest paid workers. While we celebrate the progress made on social standards and respect for labour and human rights, we really want to help our members achieve even greater impacts and engage with the wider sector to share our learnings. And then on the really important production and uptake impacts to date, there's significantly increased volumes of certified sugarcane coming onto the market. And although Brazil does still dominate the certified sugarcane market, Bonsucro certified, with approximately 2/3 of certified sugar produced, an increasing number of markets are, as I mentioned, increasing number of certified producers are now producing larger and larger volumes of certified sugarcane in the rest of Latin America and Asia Pacific, as well as in Mauritius. And we also have our buyers who are purchasing more certified products than ever before. But the rate of supply and demand still remains at around 20%. And we want to help create more value to our members, and particularly the producers, by trying to facilitate an increase in that ratio of supply and demand of certified sugarcane products. We also reviewed our positioning. Where does Bonsucro sit in relation to other similar sustainability standards, sugarcane initiatives, and so on? And we've concluded that we have a very unique position. We have an exclusive focus on sugarcane, and we will continue to have an exclusive focus on sugarcane. We have a very credible system of certificate of assurance. We have an internationally known standard and a system of claims. And we're a proud member of the umbrella organisation for sustainability standard systems called ISEAL, where we're fully code compliant. We have a focus on continuous improvement. We have global reach with local presence in the key origins. We're multi-stakeholder. That's very important to us. We're multi-stakeholder in our membership, and we're multi-stakeholder in our governance systems. And we also have the ability, with the reach that we have, to have this broader role to convene the sector as a platform for change working with our members, but also beyond our membership with other stakeholders. And I will talk about that a little bit later. So what's the global context that we are going to be working in over the next 5 years? We looked at the trends and we considered the key material trends impacting Bonsucro and the sector over the next 5 years. As we all know, we're situated in a very dynamic and urgent global context at the moment, where government and society are collectively failing to make sufficient progress on the global goals for sustainability and on climate change. People are calling this the decisive decade of action, particularly on the climate emergency. And we were all quite concerned, what would the impact of COVID be on sustainability commitments? But thankfully, the global drive for sustainable supply chains continues across key sectors, and definitely in our sectors, in the food, drink, fuels and packaging sectors where we operate. Over the next coming years, financing sustainable growth and the transition to a decarbonised and climate resilient economy is going to become, well, is already becoming, but it's going to increasingly become an overarching theme for investors. The UN estimated that last year or the year before the pandemic, $1.3 trillion was being invested in sustainable development. And they also estimate that post-pandemic, those investment flows will continue and are expected to recover. But there is still a significant financing gap in meeting these sustainable development goals. And meeting at least minimum safeguards on respect for human rights and social standards will become increasingly important for the private sector, because for the first time, ESG issues are moving beyond the reputation and supply chain resilience risks that we are more familiar with, to now becoming really core commercial, financial and legal compliance risks. Most notably in Europe currently, with a new piece of legislation that's coming out of the EU Green Deal, that will have an impact on supply chains beyond the European borders. And we do expect to see increasing levels of government legislation around these issues. We looked at the production and consumption data into the sugar markets, the ethanol markets, and we also dug into the biofuel, bioplastics and biomaterial market trends. And yes, sugar will continue to account for 75% of the end usage of sugarcane. We are going to be seeing increasing growth in those other more diverse derivatives of sugarcane. So what did that mean for Bonsucro? So we took all of that background data, the desk research, speaking to stakeholders, the interviews, the workshops, and we derived what did that mean for Bonsucro? What are the key inputs for the Bonsucro strategy to make sure that we remain very relevant, very purposeful within this current and emerging global context and taking a longer term point of view, whilst delivering value to all of our members. And we have a very diverse set of 266 members currently from across the world and across the supply chain. And we want to make sure we're building an adaptable, resilient and data-driven organisation to meet the needs of the future. So we pulled it together into our strategic plan, and I'll now introduce you to our overarching strategic framework, and then I'll dive into some more details on what it all means. So we created a wheel of concentric circles that defines on a page our new strategy, and at the heart of it, we have a newly defined purpose to collectively accelerate the sustainable production and uses of sugarcane. We really want to respond to the urgency that I mentioned just previously, the urgency of this decisive decade for action, and to really focus on the acceleration, scaling up and speeding up our impact, and to prioritize working collaboratively and collectively, yes, on certification, but also beyond certification with the wider sugarcane sector and material stakeholders. And we also have been very clear that we're working, yes, on the production, but also across the whole of the value chains. So we took our purpose statement and we've defined 3 strategic aims. and they align to the 3 pillars, the familiar pillars of sustainable development, and define how we will contribute to those global goals. Our 3 aims, which are in the circle just beyond the inner core, so the slightly lighter blue, those 3 aims, and I'll take you through them. They're interdependent and they're non-hierarchical. They're mutually reinforcing. And then for each strategic aim, we have set some high-level objectives supported by targets and indicators. Our implementation plans will be designed around 5 strategic priorities, which you can see there in the light blue, and they'll be delivered through 6 activity work streams in the green. And underpinning all of that, we have defined 4 core principles, which are on the outer edge of the circle in orange. So this is new for Bonsucro. We now have 4 Bonsucro principles which guide our operations and decision-making. They are collaboration, inclusivity, credibility, and adaptability. Collaboration is absolutely central to our purpose and to our identity as a multi-stakeholder platform and the way we work as a team. We need to be more inclusive in order to drive broader sector transformation beyond certification via strategic partnerships. And we need to be more inclusive to build a more diverse and fair sustainable supply chain. And also we want to be more inclusive in our organisation to ensure we have an inclusive Bonsucro. Credibility is absolutely fundamental to the way we govern and operate our standard system, as I mentioned. And as an SME, as a small and medium-sized enterprise in Bonsucro, adaptability is a core part of our organisational DNA. We're continuously learning and striving to improve and to be resilient to unforeseen events. So just moving on to the 3 strategic aims. The first one I'm going to discuss is to create value in the supply chain. So we know that certification delivers an array of benefits. We have the metrics to prove that. We've recently concluded 2 business case studies, one for India and one for Brazil, looking at the return on investment. And we also know that the rigor and cost of certification remains a barrier for many mills and farms, particularly for smallholder farms and smallholder supply bases. So while there is a growing commitment from buyers, there does seem to be, as I mentioned, this 20% relatively limited uptake for certified sugar to generate the return on investment for producers. And we want to create more value for mills and for farms across the whole supply chain, including the buyers and including the end users. And we also want to create more value for others with a stake in making the sector more sustainable, such as governments and investors and civil society. So our key objectives within Create Value in the supply chain are to increase the supply and demand of certified sustainable sugar, ethanol and derivatives by recruiting into new markets and sectors, to build a more inclusive and sustainable value chains. We're going to be convening more impact and innovation projects, and we want to deliver greater value to members, including through providing better data and insights for members' decision-making. The second strategic aim is to improve the environmental impact of sugarcane. We know that environmental issues are a high priority for our members and partners, many of whom have very specific commitments to reducing the negative impacts and or improving the environmental impact of sugarcane production through regenerative agriculture, through water replenishment commitments, etc. And in order to meet the Paris Agreement on climate change, all sectors, and specifically the agricultural sectors where we're working, which is a large contributor of greenhouse gas emissions, must play a leadership role. And the sugarcane sector needs to play its part in that. And we think that we have the knowledge, the standard and the network to really help convene the sector around climate action. So we want to support our members to reduce greenhouse gas emissions via certification, but we also want to facilitate the wider sugarcane sector to take collective actions to address the climate emergency and to develop sectoral greenhouse gas emission reduction pathways in line with the Paris Agreement. On water, we want to partner with others, such as the Alliance for Water Stewardship, but also other key strategic partners to address the water crisis in key origins by developing and piloting policies and plans to manage water responsibly and equitably in line with water stewardship principles. And we want to protect biodiversity and soil health and promote regenerative agriculture. And our third strategic aim is to strengthen human rights and decent work. We know that there's a growing spotlight on social and labour conditions in global supply chains and on corporate due diligence from our baseline work. And much of the world's sugarcane is grown in countries with less than optimal agricultural working conditions. The Bonsucro standard provides a framework for producers to improve, and certification enables our members to reduce risks and keep pace with those market, regulatory, investor and consumer demands. So we want to take this further. We want to drive decent work and safer working conditions for farmers and workers. Through the standard, we can support our certified producers and our members around, for example, zero tolerance on forced labour and child labour. We want to ensure safe recruitment for migrant workers, to reduce discrimination in all its forms and to promote gender equality. And we want to promote fairer wages for the lowest paid people in farming and milling through piloting some living wage approach in specific origins. And we'll be doing this through collective initiatives, working with willing partners and members. So moving to our 5 strategic priorities, what do we think is really important to do that we will act upon? And actually, before I just move to the priorities, I just wanted to reference the fact I haven't spoken about all of our targets for the sake of time, but you can see for each of those strategic aims and the specific objectives, we have identified a series of targets for ourselves by which we'll be held accountable. Okay, so moving on to our 5 strategic priorities. The first one, our first strategic priority, is our core business, is to enhance the Bonsucro standard system. And we will use the next 5 years to continuously strengthen and innovate our system of third-party assurance. We're going to, in particular, for example, take a look at our social auditing capabilities. We're going to be finalising and publishing our new Bonsucro production standard. Once that's done, we will be updating and evolving the smallholder standard in line with the revised Bonsucro production standard, but adapted to the realities of smallholder farming and drawing on lessons learned, certifying smallholders in origins, for example, such as Mauritius. We can make a bigger impact, and we're very clear we can make a bigger impact if we align and benchmark with other standards, both on the production side and on the market side. But we want to focus on those bigger strategic partnerships, and we will use a risk lens to assess those opportunities where we're going to be doing our alignment and our benchmarking. For example, we are currently aligning with the Brazilian government's Renova Bio scheme, and we will seek other opportunities to grow the market for Bonsucro certification, particularly in the emerging carbon space and the carbon standard space. And finally, we do intend to develop a stepwise approach to certification, and I'll speak more about that in a second. Our second priority is to support growers and mills on their sustainability journey at different stages. As I mentioned, inclusivity is one of our core principles. So in line with this principle of inclusivity, we're going to be developing a stepwise approach to help us scale up sustainable sugarcane production within the Bonsucro system. And we'll be, the first step will be the revision of the Bonsucro production standard, which has some elements of stepwise integrated within it. And I commend you to participate in the consultation on the new production standard, which will kick off in a couple of weeks. In this strategy period, we're really going to scale up our work around impact projects. In recent years, we've started to invest and convene impact projects, and we're going to build that up. We have the ambition to grow our impact funding to over $7 million over the strategy period, and we'll be financing this through our credit trading platform and through securing additional grants. And we want to expand on technical support to members, and we also intend to facilitate access to ESG finance for our certified members through improvements to analytics and insights. As part of our commitment to creating value and building supply and demand, we're going to prioritise market development into new sectors. Some of the sectors we already have a foothold in, some of the sectors we're going to be growing further. That includes, for example, as well as the traditional sugar sectors in the big consumer markets of Europe and USA, we want to move to build market demand in some of the middle income countries amongst buyers, such as Brazil and India and China and South Africa. We also want to see good opportunities to grow Bonsucro's standard into these new bio-based market sectors, and there's an increasing amount of interest from the rum sector in responsible sourcing. We see really good opportunities with our metricated standard, where Bonsucro could become an accepted standard for compliance by financial institutions, therefore facilitating access to green finance, and with governments where they're developing policies and regulations. We will further develop our Bonsucro credits offer. Our digital trading platform has proof of concept, and we'll be working on improvements and promotion to provide sellers with a marketplace and a return on investment, and to provide buyers with an easier way to meet their responsible sourcing commitments. And we will be facilitating further market development of that by, one of the things we want to do is provide more evidence of impact of change and stories of change. So I've spoken about our ambitions to play a more significant convening role for the sugarcane sector. We're going to build our capabilities to deliver on this. We want to capitalise on our leverage as a network and our knowledge built so far. And we'll be adding new capabilities in public policy, influencing and communications, in order that we can focus on these issues, these complex systemic issues, where collective action is needed beyond single value chains. This means working in partnership to innovate, to set targets, implement action plans, and progress the agenda on the climate action to meet the Paris Agreement, on water stewardship, on social and labour conditions, and specifically on heat stress, migrant labour and living wages, and on gender equality. And our fifth strategic priority, underpinning all of that, we are going to be investing in promoting knowledge, best practice and innovation through improved monitoring and evaluation and reporting. We want to unlock new value from our data analytics and do supply chain mapping. We want to provide shareable data in order for ESG metrics, and we're going to be building up our contribution on our partnerships on research. We're currently working on a really big research project, for example, with a number of members and the university and other standard systems and the University of Minnesota, and we want to build upon that contribution to research. So when you have a chance to look at the strategic plan, you'll see there's another chapter called Making It Happen. So we go down further from the strategic aims and the priorities into the Making It Happen section, where we really drill down into the how we will bring our strategic priorities to life. I won't be talking about that today. I've just got the couple of slides there where you can see some of those chapter headings, how we're going to be approaching improvements on certification and insurance, how we're going to be increasing the available funding to drive better outcomes for growers through our impact projects, what do we want to achieve in terms of membership development to deliver more value to our members, how are we planning to stimulate and facilitate market development, what are our thoughts on digitisation and data, and because technology will be increasingly touching every aspect of our organisation and our work. So all of that information is there for you to access. So far, I've been talking very globally, and you may be thinking, well, what's in it for my country? Just to say that we are an international organisation. We have our global headquarters in London, and we will be retaining that. But in this strategy period, we really want to grow our regional capacity to deliver where it counts in those key origins. And our work in each key origin will be consistent with the priorities and the making it happen chapters, but of course tailored to optimize impact at national and subnational levels. We have identified a selection of regional or national priorities in our strategic plan, and more will follow as we go through our planning process. We have stated that we can't spread ourselves too thin, and we can't. We will be focusing on key origins where we think we can make the biggest impact, where we already have a solid foundation, and where the risks and opportunities are most material to our strategic aims. So for the African region, we have some provisional objectives that fit in line with our strategic plan. These are to increase the number of certified mills. As I mentioned, we have 12 mills who are members of Bonsucro in Africa, a couple working towards certification, and 1 certified mill, and obviously we want to increase that. Yes, we are going to be focusing on key origins where we have a foothold, but there is a lot of more potential in Africa, in the African continent to explore, and we want to assess opportunities for growth across those key origins in the continent. We want to be engaging more with independent and smallholder farmers and bringing our impact projects and the stepwise approach. We want to be collaborating to improve water management at the farm and mill level, but also at the landscape level. And we want to collaborate to support the sector to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And of course, we want to increase awareness of those labour risks in the sugarcane sector and work collectively and collaboratively to improve human rights and working conditions. So as you can see, lots of ambition. How are we going to achieve it? Well, we need to increase the size of Bonsucro. Our ambition is to double the size of our team over the next 5 years, including much needed new capabilities at the regional level, in our operating systems, our data and analytics, our communications, policy and project funding roles. And we aim to finance that through further membership recruitment, also securing new partnerships and grants, and through our credit trading income stream. So in summary, we'll continue to support our members and place in our strategic plan quite a lot of emphasis on that and how we can provide added value to all of our diverse members. We'll continue to work exclusively in sugarcane and its value chains. SDGs are at the heart of our strategic plan. We are going to be maintaining our good global governance. We're not going to be altering our governance system, but we will be improving and strengthening it. And we will continue to deliver an internationally recognized and credible standard system for sustainable sugarcane. We're going to be strengthening creating value. We're going to strengthen our focus on climate change, water and biodiversity, our contribution to human rights and decent work, our support for smallholders, investments and partnerships. We're going to really look into the market development side for Bonsucro products and credits. We're definitely going to be becoming a more digital organisation and improve our monitoring and evaluation. And we're going to strengthen our influencing and communications. So that summarises our strategic plan. Thank you very much for listening. As you can see, Bonsucro wants to make a bigger impact. We do believe in the future of Bonsucro certification. We do believe in the impact that sustainable sugarcane can make. And we'll be wanting to work with you all to convene and facilitate change in the sector, addressing some of the most critical issues facing us today. And we very warmly invite you all on the journey with us. Thank you. And we can now spend some time on our Q&A session. So, Budavine.
Yes, thank you very much, Danielle, for this splendid presentation. I'm still waiting for the first questions to come in. I haven't seen anything yet, but I'm sure that that they will come quickly. Here's a question. Danielle, this is from Mauritius. Can you give some more details on the updating of the smallholder standards and the alignment with existing standards?
Okay, so the smallholder standard, I can't really give too much details on the updating of the smallholder standard. I think we're kicking that off towards the latter half of next year, because in line with the ISIL best practice, we revise our standards every 5 years. So once we've completed the Bonsucro production standard, then we'll move on to an update of the Bonsucro smallholder standard. And then the alignment with other standards, again, we're going to start kicking all of that off later this year once we've completed the revision of the Bonsucro production standard. And we'll be identifying what we think are the most strategic standards for Bonsucro alignment based on our ability to scale, both on the production side, and I'm very keen we also work on alignment on the market side, because one emphasis on this strategy period is to increase market demand, and there are opportunities for the market there if we can align with other market standards, such as, for example, maybe the aviation fuel standard CORSIA, or there's some climate bonds standards where we can look at alignment with, so that potentially sugarcane credits can access those markets. So we're going to be looking both at supply and demand in terms of alignment, and we're going to be prioritizing who we work with based on our principles that I spelt out. Yeah.
Thank you. I have another question. This is from Janice De War from the South African Milling Research Institute. Which new bio-based products beyond sugar are you aiming for in terms of application of your certification?
Which new bio-based products are you aiming
for?
So the certification is already enables mills to sell certified bagasse, molasses, ethanol, and sugar into the supply chain. And so far, those products can then be transformed into other products. So the diversification will then take place downstream. I don't think, but Nicholas may come in.
Yeah, I think that we're quite active in the bioplastic sector at the moment, and packaging material.
Yeah.
And then obviously
certified
ethanol. Yeah, and ethanol. Yeah, so that is at this stage, I think, our biggest. But are we looking into other applications? Yes, of course. And Janice, I'm actually having a meeting at your office not so long from today, I think next week. And this is one of the things we will talk about. And Janice has another question, just to follow up. And she's asking if there is a relationship between Bonsucro and other global standards, like the RSB. I actually had a meeting with RSB yesterday, but Danielle, I will also leave it to you to answer that.
Yeah. Well, there you go. We do have a working relationship with RSB, and we do have a relationship with other global standards. We particularly work probably most closely with those standards who are within the ISIL network, and the other code compliance standards within the ISIL network. But yeah, specifically with RSB, yes, we do have a working relationship. We've worked, for example, previously very closely in Africa on a project with fair trade as another standard, it's another relevant standard. We have a project at the moment in South Africa where we're working with the cotton standard and with the Alliance for Water Stewardship. So as well as working with standards in our space, we also work with standards in other spaces, because we want to have that broader impact at a bigger scale at the landscape level where there may be multiple commodities being grown. And so we are also keen to align and work closely with other standards. We have another big collaborative research project we're doing at the moment with the Global Standard for Sustainable Rubber and the Global Standard for Sustainable Palm Oil. So again, taking that landscape view.
Yeah. And also, Janice, for your information, Bonsucro established together with other standards, but it was led by Bonsucro, a working group or committee of global standards that are active in Africa. So in that group, you will find organizations like FSC for the forestry stewardship, but also AWS from water, fair trade again, but also, for example, fair trade and a Rainforest Alliance. So it's a group of standards, all member of ICL that are working together and see what is our common agenda as a group. Another question, anonymous, is asking whether the sugar industry, harvest and milling, is carbon positive or negative.
Well, I mean, it depends on their mode of production. So we have data from certified mills. We can see a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, and sometimes, depending on the efficiency of that mill, it could be carbon positive if they're able to use their materials in the generation of electricity and so on and so forth. But I can't give a definitive answer to that question. I would like to say that we have our carbon accounting methodology. We have a greenhouse gas calculator that we use in the process of certification. It's an accepted methodology by the European Union for their Renewable Energy Directive, so it's very comprehensive methodology. We're working to improve and refine it along with our new standard, and to investigate how we can use it and take our knowledge, take our experience, take our calculator, take our data, and how we can use this and apply it in the sphere of carbon accounting and trading. Because the sugarcane sector, it's such an efficient crop in and of itself, but it's about how it's being produced, and there's many factors to take into account. You know, because of the sheer volume of land under sugarcane production, it's got a huge role to play in the decarbonisation of many economies.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, and Anonymous, I've also been doing research in this in the last few months, and it depends indeed, but what Danielle says, how it's produced. The one thing that contributes largely in South Africa to carbon emissions in terms of farming, sugarcane farming, is the irrigation. So where there is irrigation, usually Eskom electricity is used, and that is fueled by coal. And obviously coal is, has a high emission. It really depends on the circumstances. And obviously in KwaZulu-Natal, where you often don't have irrigation, there will be much less emission. Yeah. Another question also, anonymous, do you foresee collaborating with other existing standards for smallholders to reduce the number of certifications? It's about certification fatigue, time and cost.
Yeah. I mean, so as I mentioned, we've commissioned this study, business case study, which was quite a deep dive look at certified smallholder mills who were certified to the smallholder standard in India, where we've had quite some success in certification to the smallholder standard, and probably so some good evidence of impact over time, over albeit a small amount of time, because the smallholder standard was only came into being 3 years ago. And that information is going to be very valuable for us as we reflect upon how we can improve the next iteration of the smallholder standards to reduce the costs and to improve the outcomes. In addition, we reflected on the fact of these barriers, and that's why we have taken forward, made a commitment to taking forward the concept of a stepwise approach to certification in order to sort of lower those costs of entry or the barriers to entry to a broader range of producers, which includes clearly smallholders. So that's a journey that we're going to be going on in terms of collaborating with other existing standards, where, as I mentioned, where those standards make sense strategically for us to partner with. Absolutely, we're all about collaboration where it makes the most sense.
Yeah, and if, for example, in the South African context, I can imagine Swiss Farms would be an organization that we could work with in terms of smallholders, and other countries that would be other type of organizations or standards or guidelines. Yeah. Danielle, another question. It's around the credit trading. Somebody's asking how far are we with the credit trading system?
So in terms of the Bonsucro credit trading system, that's live, that's ongoing, that's doing pretty well in terms of turnover of credits. So if you go on the bonsucro.com website, you'll see a tab, credit trading. You can click on it, it will take you to our trading portal. It's available to all certified producers to sell, to register and sell, and all our members to buy. So that's available.
Okay, we have another question. It's from Johan. Johan, what do you consider to be the main barriers for access to green or sustainable finance for the new bio-based products that your certification will help to address? So what are barriers basically to green and sustainable finance?
I would just say access to metric data, so to those proof points that can demonstrate compliance, because financial institutions are obviously very highly compliance based and have due diligence protocols. So having, if you know, our research has indicated that by if we can provide access to shareable certification data that demonstrates, for example, reductions in water use or compliance with core labour standards and so on and so forth. If we can provide that compliance information, then it will enable financial institutions to provide access to finance. In fact, Budavine is working on a project at the moment in this very sphere, trying to align the standards with access to finance, working with some big financial institutions in South Africa.
Yes.
So that's what I'm saying.
Yes, and in that context, maybe just to add, I think the limited understanding of financial institutions in terms of sustainability and how it links to risk is still a big issue. And exactly as Danielle said, it's access to data, access to the right information at the right time that will help that finance will become available more easily. I have another question here regarding the commitment to be taken for the code of conduct. What happens if one or two commitments could not be taken?
I'm not sure.
So the code of conduct of Bonsucro, there are certain commitments that members are expected to take. And if they don't reach those commitments, what's going to happen? Is their membership going to be terminated, or other cautions?
Okay, so in terms of the code of our code of conduct, in the most egregious cases where there's evidence of non-compliance with the code of conduct, or evidence that members are not respecting human rights in their supply chain and so on and so forth, if we are presented with information and evidence of information, we can open an investigation into that. and stakeholders are also encouraged to use our grievance mechanism. We have a grievance mechanism that's available to all stakeholders that we've established alongside our code of conduct, where stakeholders can bring a complaint against a Bonsucro member and present that to an independent third-party process. And it's a process of mediation to try and make a resolution, and then if there's no resolution, to adjudication, and the adjudicator will determine the outcome. And if they consider that on the evidence based there has been a significant breach, they could recommend, you know, suspension or termination of Bonsucro membership. So that would go through our grievance mechanism process.
Thank you. Another question from Janice Dewa. Can Bonsucro share ESG investment criteria for diversified products, for example, bioplastic? Also, do the criteria vary for different products?
Yeah, quite a detailed question. Maybe, Janice, we could take that up with you. I hear Budavine says he's having a meeting with you, so we could perhaps bring some of that information to that meeting as part of that discussion.
Yes, thank you. That's a good idea. Any more questions? We still have a little bit of time. I think there's about 5 minutes left, and I ran out of questions.
That's okay.
Yeah. Well, maybe it was all very clear, Danielle. And if there are no more questions, I think we can wrap up, Danielle. What do you think?
Yes, absolutely. Anybody would like to, you know, obviously we're here, we're available. Just reach out, contact any one of my team for any follow-up, and we'll be sending an email with links to the strategy for your perusal at your leisure. And thank you very much for spending your time with us today, and really look forward to working with all of you over the next coming years.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you, Danielle, for your presentation. There's a lot of work still ahead of us, because now we have a strategy, but now we have to make the implementation plan. And that's the work that lies ahead of us for the next few months. And I'm sure I will get the opportunity to share that with you in the future. And yeah, hope to see you soon, chat soon. Goodbye.
Bye. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.